there's a lot of information out there about world building, but the way that I like to approach it is generally, if you change this thing, how will people change in response to it? And so for Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology, I was like, all right, if the landscape was made of big animals and they moved around, then there would be people who would want to research them and study them, like we have real life scientists.
Ho, 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 ho. Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 478. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the award-winning and internationally acclaimed children's book author and artist, Angela Hsieh.
Thank you for having me. Those are very big claims.
And technically true, too. So, yeah.
Technically true, yes.
Yeah, see? And so you're here because we reached out. This is fun. Before we started the interview, we were talking about that we scheduled this back in May, and so we just then there's scheduling conflicts, and I held fast and I said, listen, we got to make sure Angela comes on. So fast forward 6 months later, here we are, Angela, talking about it was a new book straight coming out 6 months ago, right? Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology. That is something else.
Geozoology.
Geozoology, yes. So everybody knows what geology is, the study of, the earth and
The earth,
all that
rocks,
stuff.
yeah.
Rocks. Zoology is the study of animals. So what is geozoology?
It is just mashing the two together. So animals that are also part of the landscape and they're made of rocks.
So Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology, and as you mentioned, it says perfect for fans of Studio Ghibli, the Tea Dragon Society. The beautiful graphic novel follows a girl who learns about friendship and family as she journeys across the fantastical land of Liren to tend to its majestic animals.
Yeah, so the Studio
Did I
Ghibli
pronounce those words right?
Oh,
Did I?
yes.
Okay, good.
Yes. Um, I was just gonna say the Studio Ghibli comparison was not something I pitched with. I did pitch with a comparison to the Tea Dragon Society and also to Shantan's The Arrival, but the Studio
Okay.
Ghibli thing was, marketing working its magic.
Right. You think you got to throw in those log lines in there that help with like the SEO right there. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, to be fair, I did grow up with Studio Ghibli films, and I've watched many of them throughout my life, but I definitely wasn't going in being like, yeah, you know what I'm making? Something that can be
Yeah.
compared to Studio Ghibli.
Kind of tell us a little bit about your journey, kind of like what led you to become a graphic novelist and and just kind of also talk a little bit about your path to publication with Quill Tree Books.
Yeah, so I am an illustrator by training. I went to art school to get a degree. Bachelor's in fine arts. But actually, before that, I was in biology. I got a biology degree. I was going to go into medicine, but oh gosh, it just was. Not that I didn't like the material, and not that I didn't find it interesting. It's just that okay, let me back up a little bit. I was gonna go into medicine, but then I was like, I like animals. I was gonna go into veterinary medicine. So I got some internships in like wildlife refuges and zoos. The thing is, they were cool. Like they were like really cool internships, and yet I was like, I want to go home and draw. Like, I would be doing things that from the outside just and also like honestly even while I was there I was just like this is awesome. Like I got to vaccinate some bison, and like I said, awesome. I do think it was great, but in between I would just always be like, yeah, I want to go home and draw. And plus being on your feet for 12 hours a day was just doing terrors on my knees. And this was when I was in my 20s, by the way. So I don't think I'm built for that sort of thing. I eventually ended up going to art school, and I was actually going to be an editorial illustrator. So I still do that. I wanted to draw for you know, newspapers, for journals and magazines and that sort of thing. And when I graduated, I got an internship with NPR, which was very helpful for the editorial illustration part of my career. And that ended up being a contract position for a year, and I made a lot of work then. And but eventually I wanted to do more. I Editorial illustration is wonderful in a lot of ways, in that I liked having a project for no more than 2 weeks and I could call it done and it could be published, and I was like, I feel accomplished. Here's the not instant, but relatively fast gratification compared to making an entire book. And but in the end, I wanted more out of it. I wanted more out of illustration. There's only so much you can say with one illustration, and I was illustrating for articles that other people had written, and I just I wanted to tell stories for a very long time, even if I put that aside for a while I was focusing on my academics and on other things, and that sort of came back at some point. When I went freelance, I was like, I think it's time. I think I need to take this dive. And it also happened to be at around the time when the middle grade graphic novel was really hitting its stride and people
Mm.
were acquiring. So it seemed to be the right time.
And because yeah, because you illustrated Antarctica,
Yes,
but
I
as you
did.
said, like Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology is your first that you were the writer and illustrator for it.
Yes. I had, during my time at NPR, one of my co-interns, who you may know if you're in the graphic novel space, Deb Lee,
Hmm.
they introduced me to their agent. And that sort of really got things going, where I had ideas in the back of my mind, but once I was introduced to a literary agent, I was like, oh, maybe I should actually make the thing. And um, there was a long gap in between meeting the agent and then actually making the thing, because I was also working at NPR, etc. And I actually also ended up switching agents, not for any, you know, dramatic reason, just we weren't the right fit, and I just decided that I needed to go and do the cold querying stuff to actually understand what I was looking for. As at the time that I had signed on with this agent, I was not in a great place in my life. I'm not going to get into it. It just was an awful time. And
Mm.
when he offered, I was like, yes, please, anything. And so I didn't, look at what else was out there or do my research. And I really ought to have. So I ended up parting ways amicably with this agent and actually figuring out what I wanted out of an agent. But so I think I signed with the first one in 2018. Um, I signed with a new one in 2020, and then I got the deal for Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology at the end of 2020 and signed the contract in 2021.
How did you come up with the idea of pairing fantasy creatures with scientific field work? I think that's some of the most gorgeous things about the book.
Thank you. It sort of felt inevitable that that would be one of the first things that I put into a book, to be honest, given my background. So I always loved reading fantasy growing up. That would be the first thing I would reach for in any library or bookstore. I would go to the fantasy section and see what was there.
Mm.
And like I said, I have a background in biology, and I know that animals are going to feature in pretty much anything that I do in whatever capacity. But so I felt like putting the two together would was just it was bound to happen. And the thing that really kicked this specific idea off was that I have this friend. She is a fan of guinea pigs. They're her favorite animal. And so I drew her a birthday illustration one year, and I think that was in 2017, so 8 years ago at this point. And my thought process was pretty basic. You like guinea pig? What if guinea pig but bigger? And so I drew a a guinea pig the size of a mountain with this little character climbing up its back. And I also thought it would be fun to pretend like this was a real place. So I wrote a little description of it as if it were a national park postcard you would find in a gift shop or something like that. And yeah, that really kicked it off. My friend loved it, and it turns out a lot of other people did love it too. And so I started making a series of these like big animal landscapes. And my initial thought was not to make it a graphic novel. Sort of figured I would make a calendar, like the Audubon calendars where they have the birds and little facts about the birds.
Mm.
Uh, and yeah, I didn't really plan to make it a book. I was like, these are just fun illustrations. And they became so much more, especially after I started talking to people in the publishing world. And then I thought maybe I would make it a picture book.
Mm.
And then it got bigger. It just kept getting bigger. And like I said, there was a moment where I also realized that, oh, the middle grade graphic novel is really hot right now. Maybe I can turn this into a graphic novel. And so that's sort of the origin story.
Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. Is there a symbolism or role of the giant animals in the story? Do they represent anything to, well, either you as the the creator, or do they represent anything to, say, Lu and Ren?
They're they're basically a way to show how wonderful and big the world is. I There's also a part of it that I will admit is that if I'm gonna have to draw 250 pages of this thing, I better make it something I really wanna draw. So I really, really wanted to draw these big landscape animals, and I've always been a fan of thinking of how people would interact with this world. Um, so there's a lot of information out there about world building, but the way that I like to approach it is generally, if you change this thing, how will people change in response to it? And so for Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology, I was like, all right, if the landscape was made of big animals and they moved around, then there would be people who would want to research them and study them, like we have real life scientists.
Hmm.
And this aspect of someone going out and researching, but having to travel a long distance, sort of melded together with this other idea that I had floating in my brain at this point, where I was thinking about growing up as, a member of the Taiwanese American diaspora and this physical distance that I have between myself and my grandparents. And one of the things I love about fantasy is that you can take these real life problems and make them even bigger, right? So that was also part of it, where it's just, okay, so Lou's grandma, who is a central figure in this book, has a very rich, very exciting life, but Lou can't really understand all of it. Um, so grandma goes off to study these creatures, and she, in many ways to Lou, becomes a sort of mythical figure where she's out there doing amazing things in these amazing places and learning about these incredible creatures, lands, everything, and she can't really, and Lou herself can't really touch this. And so, circling back to your original question, I think it is both the wonder of the natural world and also something mysterious and a little untouchable about it. But that doesn't mean that the people of this world aren't going to try.
Your book kind of mixes fantasy with with some real world emotional depth. How did you balance those two elements throughout the narrative that you created?
Ooh, well, I hope I did it well. I think those two go hand in hand. I
Hmm.
think that the reason I set this in a fantastical world was to make things feel bigger, right?
Hmm.
I am thinking about how when you're going on a hike, let's say, and there's this portion of the hike that is getting there, and it's really hard, it's really sweaty, your feet hurt, and there's a moment where you suddenly come across this incredible natural vista. And that is something that I find a little hard to get across if you're not there in person, right?
Hmm.
But I think that if I add, for example, a herd of giant guinea pigs in here, and I can put that in a spread and make that like and sort of and work in the correct pacing and the page turn, you'll open it and you'll see something incredible and unexpected.
Hmm.
So I'm hoping that that sort of emotional reaction comes across when I add a fantastical element to the story.
Right. Was there any particular moment or conversation in the book that you found especially that was either moving or like difficult to write that you're happy to put it out on paper?
Ooh. I think I honestly think that the most emotional parts were not the most difficult. I think the most
Really?
difficult
Okay.
parts were trying to make something that was exposition sound interesting and less like exposition, even though the information still had to get across. But for the really emotional moments, they were my favorite to write. I There is a point about two-thirds of the way through the book where inevitably Lu and Ren get into a fight. And
Hmm.
gosh, I loved writing that fight. I was like, yes, let it all out. Tell each other how you feel. And I love drawing it too because, angry expressions are just a lot of fun to draw. I think that perhaps let's see. There's a scene that is pretty quiet, but I think is was one of my favorite pieces to write. And again, it wasn't even terribly difficult. It was just something that I was really looking forward to writing. So there's this scene where Lu and Ren they're talking about the constellations. They're
Mhm.
in their sleeping bags looking up at the night sky, and they're talking about the stories that they've heard that they've heard from their parents and their grandparents about the various constellations that they see. And both Lu and Ren are meant to be the fantasy equivalent of Taiwanese American. And I thought it was really fun to tell different stories. So they're seeing the same stars. They're seeing the same constellations, but they had different stories that they associate with them, and they're arguing about which one is the correct version. And I just really like that because I thought that was a really important scene to include, even though it's what is it? It's like 6 pages because even despite being part of the same with quotation marks diaspora, you still have a variety of experiences, and the stories that you tell are not necessarily the same. And I just really enjoyed coming up with a mythology that was similar but different. So in this case, it was about they're telling a story about a tiger, and one of them is like, "Oh, the tiger's good, like it helped defend the people," and the other one is
Mm.
just like, "No, this tiger tore a hole in the sky and caused a flood. What are you talking about?" And then the hero Feng Ying had to come in and defeat it, and so they're having a good-natured argument about this, but it's still a very passionate one. And it sort of reminded me of the times that I would talk to my you know Chinese and Taiwanese American friends, and we'd heard different versions of various stories growing up, and partially because our memories were probably making things up, and partially because we just heard different ones because we've heard them from different people. And everyone gets really heated about it. It's kind of fun, but not in a,
Mm,
in a friendship ending way. Just no. What version did you hear? How could you possibly think that's how it went? And we're talking about like myths, right?
right.
Things that didn't actually happen.
Who are the main characters in this? Is it Lu and Ren, or is it the world that you created?
Oh, that's always a fun question. Um, I, I still think the main character is Lu and Ren, but I do love Place's character, and I think I kind of interpreted that super literally when I made the place an actual living creatures.
Hmm,
Um, I think the story wouldn't happen without the landscape being what it is with the giant animals, but I still think that at the core of it, Lu and Ren are the main characters of this tale.
right. Now, do you see yourself coming back and do you have more stories to tell in this world, or you told your story and you want to go on to other projects?
For now, I'm moving on to other projects. I leave it open to have more stories in this world, but right now, I definitely want to work on something else. It took me 3 years to make this, and I do this
Wow.
full time. Yeah, it took a while, and so I'm ready to take a break from it, to be honest. I love it. I think there's a possibility they'll do something in the future, but at the moment, I'm like, something else, please.
Was there any like visual Easter eggs or nods in the artwork that readers might miss on first read then as well?
Oh yeah, there's a few. I guess so this particular page, Lou is leaving on her journey and she's basically putting together her packing list. And
Okay.
if
Oh,
you'd
whoops.
gone to school with me at I had there was a particular class I took at RIS. Oh, I'm going to put this back up at RISD. I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, and one of the teachers had an assignment where we were supposed to draw our packing list. And so, if anyone is from RISD and had Fred Lynch as a teacher, they would recognize this page. They're like, "Oh wait, you cribbed that from an assignment," and I'm like, I sure did. It was a great assignment." And my teacher, Fred, actually saw this page online and was like, "Wait a minute."
What do you hope middle grade readers take away from Lou and Ren's story?
I think that there are a few things.
Mm,
I wrote it that for many different audiences, in the middle grade sphere. So overall, I hope that people that the middle grade audience, they remember the splendors of the natural world, about how wonderful and wide it is, and about how you can use your own problem solving skills to learn things, and that there's always more out there. The world is very expansive and very large. And I also wrote it for kids who, like me, grew up as, part of the diaspora. There is a very strong thread in here about Lou's relationship with her grandmother, and she has trouble communicating with her grandmother. Like me, she is someone who can speak it relatively speak her grandma's mother tongue relatively fluently,
mm,
but can't read it. That's one of the quirks of Chinese. It is very difficult to learn how to read, even if you can speak it very well. So the idea that she is always striving to communicate with her grandmother in a way that she can't quite grasp, but the fact that even despite her struggles, she can still find a way to connect with her grandmother despite the distance between them in both, the physical sense and the emotional in the linguistic sense. They can still connect in some ways by finding what the other person loves and just knowing that there are some things that transcend language.
Now, if people want to learn more about you and your work, Angela, where's the best place they could go to?
So the best place to find me is probably just my website. It is
Okay.
www.angelahh.com. And I also have a newsletter, which is, yes, as you can see, it's the second from the right. You can keep up with me there. I am nominally on social media, but we all know how that is nowadays. You might not even see the things I post if you follow me. However, I am on there on Instagram and Blue Sky at Hsieh, which is spelled Hisiheyaah. I'm too attached to it to change it at this point, but I know it's hard to spell.
And so if people want to read Lu and Ren's Guide to Geozoology, the first thing they could do is probably ask their local library to
Yes.
order it. And then from there, they could probably pick it up at any local bookstores as well.
Yes, I always
Yeah.
encourage your local indie, bookshop.org. Let's not talk about the other ones because you know where to find them. And the library, please request it at your library. We underutilize our libraries and you should go more.
That's right. Yes, absolutely. When your next project, come back on, we'll talk more. And then I had more questions, but we're ran out of time. So
Oh my gosh, that kind of flew by.
I know, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I am working
Yeah.
on a second book. This is part of a two-book deal. It is, like I said, not going to be a sequel because I need a break, but I'm going to do another middle grade graphic novel, same length, full color. So I'll disappear for another 3 years before I come back on.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Angela.
Well, thank you. And again, thanks for being flexible with your schedule, rescheduling. I'm glad we eventually got here 6 months later.
That's right.